In 2017, Taika David Cohen, known as Taika Waititi to many, was Hollywood's untouchable golden boy. The quirky New Zealand filmmaker who had just delivered one of the biggest surprise hits of the year, Thor Ragnarok. And thanks to his fresh comedic voice and his ability to reinvent a dying franchise, Thor Ragnarok became Marvel's most critically acclaimed film of the year, with a 93% Rotten Tomatoes score and over $850 million at the worldwide box office. Taika worked his way into Hollywood fame as the indie darling who could do no wrong, while creating an image for himself as the director who brought heart and humor to blockbuster filmmaking. Critics loved him, audiences adored him, studios were throwing blank checks at him. He had a Star Wars movie lined up, creative control over Marvel's most lucrative franchise, and the kind of cultural approval that made him untouchable. He even won an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for Jojo Rabbit in 2020, becoming the first person of Maori descent to win an Academy Award in a screenplay category. But within just a few years of rising to Hollywood's A-list, Taika's reputation is now in the gutter. And for many, Jojo Rabbit, the same movie he won an Oscar for, marks the moment when his career hit a downturn. He's not unemployed, he's not broke, and he's certainly not forgotten. But he's been demoted. Taika now exists in that part of Hollywood where once beloved filmmakers go after they've burned through their goodwill, squandered their reputation, and proven they can no longer be trusted with a $200 million budget. But that decline didn't happen overnight. It started with Taika sabotaging his own work, treating his projects like inside jokes that only he understood.
Does that look real?
No, actually.
And while Hollywood writers were on strike in 2023, Taika seemed more interested in his fashion modeling career than in addressing the fundamental problems plaguing his storytelling. Taika went from being Hollywood's most beloved director, who once pulled in critical acclaim and massive box office numbers, to now being known for a string of failures that resulted in him scrambling for relevance. All because he stopped caring about craft and started treating filmmaking like a vehicle for his personal brand. Before Taika Waititi became Hollywood's most disappointing filmmaker, he was something else entirely. He was authentic.
As Māori, we're very funny people, but it's often hard to see that in some of our films. You know, we're just pretty normal people who hang out and make stupid mistakes.
In 2010, he released Boy, a semi-autobiographical film about a young Maori kid living in rural New Zealand who idolizes Michael Jackson and his absent father. The film was shot in the Bay of Plenty area, where Taika partly grew up, and even played the deadbeat dad.
Can you stop calling me Dad? Sounds weird.
Boy wasn't just good, it grew to be very popular in New Zealand. It won at the 2010 Berlin Film Festival and became the highest-grossing New Zealand film at the local box office at the time, proving that Taika could blend heart, humor, and authenticity in a way that resonated deeply with audiences. 6 years later, Taika gave the public another movie to love, Hunt for the Wilder People. This was another deeply personal film about a rebellious foster kid and his grumpy foster uncle on the run in the New Zealand bush. The movie was made on a tiny budget of just $2.5 million, but went on to gross nearly $24 million worldwide, and became the highest-grossing New Zealand film of all time, excluding international co-productions. Critics and audiences loved Hunt for the Wilder People. It had a 97% Rotten Tomatoes score. It was funny, it was heartfelt, and it proved that Waititi's brand was about authenticity and heart. Here's what Cohen Holloway, one of the actors in the movie, had to say about Taika and working with him on the Hunt for the Wilder People.
He's the nicest guy in the whole world, and just amazing professional, and just full of praise and instantly relaxes you. He's one of the funniest guys I've ever met, and he actually likes my humor.
Stiff, boring, and completely out of step with what audiences wanted. Taika threw out the formula and infused Ragnarok with his signature humor, visual inventiveness, and added a sense of fun into what was the MCU's most lifeless franchise at the time. Thor Ragnarok earned an amazing 93% on Rotten Tomatoes and made $854 million worldwide. With the success of a huge movie like this, Taika had proven that he could take his indie ideas and scale them up to a $180 million blockbuster without losing what made him special. Then in 2019, Taika came out with Jojo Rabbit, the film that would cement his place as one of the most important filmmakers of his generation. Jojo Rabbit was a World War II satire about a young Hitler Youth member whose imaginary friend is Adolf Hitler. It was audacious, funny, and unlike anything else in theaters at the time.
Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Ooh, that's it, you got it! Heil Hitler! Have a great day! Heil Hitler! You're gonna be the best!
It earned 6 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, and on February 9th, 2020, Taika Waititi walked onto the stage at the Dolby Theatre and accepted the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay, making him the first person of Maori descent to win an Academy Award in a screenplay category.
This is really great, and I dedicate this to all the Indigenous kids in the world who want to do art and dance and write stories. We are the original storytellers, and we can make it here.
For Taika, this was the peak, the moment any director would dream of. That Oscar gave him indie credibility, and the success of Ragnarok was proof of his diverse skills. Taika was untouchable, on his way to building a legacy that would be remembered in Hollywood's Hall of Fame. But this is exactly when everything started to fall apart. Somewhere between winning an Oscar and getting handed the keys to Marvel's billion-dollar franchise, Taika Waititi stopped being a filmmaker and started becoming a brand. And the brand was built on a very specific image, the effortlessly cool genius who didn't need to try.
I'm the laziest actor you'll ever come across. I played Hitler, didn't read anything about him. I just played Blackbeard, and Our Flag Means Death. I went on Wikipedia, I typed in Blackbeard, and there's too many words.
In interviews after Jojo Rabbit, Waititi started talking about his complete lack of preparation as a flex. When he was asked about how he researched Hitler for the role, he said he didn't do any research and didn't have to do any research. Taika said, and I quote, "I didn't base him on anything I'd seen about Hitler before. I just made him a version of myself that happened to have a bad haircut, a shitty little mustache, and a mediocre German accent." But this should have been a huge red flag, but no one saw it because Jojo Rabbit worked, and that was because the film was about a child's imaginary version of Hitler. Audiences and critics gave Taika a pass for Jojo Rabbit, but what they didn't realize was that this wasn't just about the role. This was becoming Taika's entire personality. In podcast appearances and interviews, he started bragging about his writing process, which apparently involved doing this.
I usually write the script, maybe write one or two drafts, then I will put it away for a bit, maybe a year. Come back to it and I'll reread it, maybe once or twice, and then I will throw it away. Well, maybe make one copy, put that on like a little USB stick, and then I'll lock it away somewhere. And then I'll rewrite the whole thing from memory, from what I've read.
On paper, this sounds very quirky and innovative, a new and refreshing way to do things, but in practice, it meant that Taika was trusting his gut over structure, instinct over craft, and prioritizing vibes over actual storytelling discipline. But that's not all. On the set of Free Guy in 2021, director Sean Levy revealed that there were 9 hours of Taika Waititi improvisation left on the cutting room floor. Here's what co-star Jodie Comer had to say about him on the set of that movie.
I literally came to set on days that I wasn't in to watch his scenes, because what that guy does is insane. He has so much freedom with what he does.
Wow, killed it.
His brain is just constantly taking over.
It sounded like she was praising him, but this could also be seen as a director turned actor who could not stick to the script, who needed to always be the center of attention, and was starting to believe that everything he did was picture perfect. In 2023, during the Writers Guild strike, Waititi gave a diversity speech at the Sundance Film Festival and said he didn't write anything because there was a strike, and he even admitted that he employed the help of artificial intelligence for his speech.
As you can tell, there's a writer's strike on, so I didn't write shit. I did ask ChatGPT for a speech. I'll tell you what, it was pretty good.
It was supposed to be funny, but to the writers striking for fair pay and respect, it landed like a slap in the face. He won an Oscar for writing and was treating the craft like a joke. By 2022, the warning signs were everywhere. In podcast appearances, Waititi sounded less like a filmmaker passionate about storytelling and more like a disconnected celebrity who treated movies as content to put out between fashion shoots. One New Zealand critic said, "In interviews, Waititi sometimes talks about how he didn't do any research for a film or show, improvises a lot, doesn't really know what he's doing, and so on. The unspoken and sometimes spoken sentiment is, I can still toss off masterpieces because I'm a genius. In reality, his disorganization and lack of effort really shows." At this point in his career, it was clear for all to see that Taika's success had gone to his head, and Hollywood, always hungry for the next big thing, bore witness to what happens when you give a blank check to someone who would stop caring about their work. The moment that revealed who Taika Waititi had become after his rise to fame was this Vanity Fair video that was released in July 2022, just days after Thor: Love and Thunder was released in theaters.
Does that look real? In that particular shot, no, actually. This shot, when I go, it's because it used to be when he would wake up. That was my reaction. But you just left it there randomly. But I kind of don't mind it. Yeah, look.
I'm mistaken.
Taika laughed at his own movie. He laughed at the VFX work, at the people who had sleepless nights under Marvel's impossible deadlines to bring his vision to life. That video went viral for the wrong reasons, with people leaving comments like, "I love how they're explaining the utter lack of planning and direction this movie had while acting like they're jazz artists or something. This video is utter torture. They legit admit they didn't know what was going to happen in the story while filming. They also tear into the CGI that was made by underpaid, overworked VFX artists." The timing couldn't have been worse because just weeks before before the video made it to the internet, a now deleted viral Reddit thread had exposed the horrific working conditions VFX artists faced at Marvel Studios. Artists were talking about how they usually request not to work on Marvel movies and TV shows. Former Guardians of the Galaxy VFX artist Drew Goville made a now deleted tweet on Twitter, now known as X, saying, "Working on Marvel shows is what pushed me to leave the VFX industry. They're a horrible client, and I've seen way too many colleagues break down after being overworked, while Marvel tightens the purse strings." And while all of this was going on, Taika Waititi was publicly mocking the very people who had been exploited to realize his vision. But the VFX mockery was only the beginning. The real crime was what Taika did to Thor himself. In Ragnarok, Thor was funny but competent. He cracked jokes, but he was still a god, still a warrior, still a hero. In Love and Thunder, Waititi turned him into a moron. One Reddit user wrote, "I feel like Thor has gradually been dumbed down, especially from what the character was in the Avengers movies. He had quick wit and had a lot of knowledge. I get that he's dealt with a lot of death, but he's not an idiot." And then there were the goats. The goats that wouldn't stop screaming.
Giant goats. Oh, look at those. They are wonderful. Oh, look at that.
According to Taika, the inspiration for the screaming goats came from Taylor Swift and her 2012 song, "I Knew You Were Trouble."
What were they inspired by? Because I've heard people say it was the internet video. I've heard people say it was a hip-hop song. Like, what?
It's a song. I can't remember what the song is. It was some song with that screaming. It was just like, it's like, and it was, I don't know what the hell it is. It's not that, like, you know, what the Fox says thing, but it felt like seemed like it was a similar thing.
Thor Love and Thunder felt as if Taika was pranking the audience and not caring about the lore or the Norse mythology that the movie is supposed to be based on. At the box office, Love and Thunder opened to $144 million domestically, but in its second weekend, it crashed 68%, one of the biggest drops in MCU history. Taika had been handed one of the most loved movie franchises in the world, and he treated it like a joke. This was clear sabotage, but while he was actively sabotaging his work, he was simultaneously undergoing a personal rebrand. Taika was no longer the cool director who does authentic work, and on a balcony in Sydney, Australia, the world got a glimpse of who Taika Waititi had really become. In May 2021, everyone woke up to photos that would permanently reshape Taika Waititi's public image. Paparazzi had captured the director on a balcony in Sydney, Australia, kissing and cuddling with both singer Rita Ora and actress Tessa Thompson after what the tabloids were calling an all-night party. The photos went viral instantly. Social media exploded with confusion, curiosity, and memes. Because Taika and Rita Ora were dating at the time, people made comments like, "Rita Ora being in a poly relationship with Taika Waititi and Tessa Thompson wasn't on my 2021 bingo card. But here we are." Another person said, "If you told me a year ago Tessa Thompson, Rita Ora, and Taika Waititi would be in a throuple, I would have slapped you and called you a liar." But while the internet treated this as gossip, Disney and Marvel were furious. And according to reports, Marvel bosses were very unhappy about the viral photos. The company's executives reportedly called Taika in for a meeting and reprimanded him, making it clear that that is not the image that they wanted to sell to kids who watch their movies. Taika responded to these viral photos, saying that he wasn't upset about them because he was doing nothing wrong. But the damage was already done. Taika used to be the relatable underdog from New Zealand who made touching indie films about foster kids and Maori boys. But now, he was just another Hollywood socialite caught up in tabloid drama. And it only got worse. Later in September 2021, Taika appeared at the Met Gala, fashion's biggest night out. He showed up with Rita Ora in matching suits, and generally acted like someone who'd rather be on the red carpet than in the editing room. And his tendencies would only escalate in the coming years. In 2023, he wore a gunmetal blazer, white trousers, a long pearl necklace, and a black floral corsage to honor Karl Lagerfeld. In 2024, he wore a completely brown leather suit from Marni, complete with a leather tie and gloves, while Rita flaunted $145,000 worth of Buccellati jewelry. His diamond necklace at the 2024 Met Gala alone was reportedly worth $6 million.
Hi guys, I'm wearing a necklace this year at the Met. I'd say so.
And in August 2025, Taika celebrated his 50th birthday with a star-studded party in Ibiza, drawing Hollywood celebrities like Matt Damon and Cara Delevingne from around the world. It was extravagant, it was glamorous, but miles away from the image of a low-key filmmaker who once made movies on a shoestring budget in rural New Zealand. At this point, the brand dilution was complete. Taika Waititi was no longer a filmmaker first. He was a Hollywood socialite who happened to direct movies on the side. The filmmaker who once represented authenticity and heart now represented excess and ego, and cared more about his next red carpet appearance than his next film. By 2023, the consequences of Taika's creative shortcomings were beginning to manifest in a string of failed and cancelled projects. The first was Akira, the live-action adaptation of Katsuhiro Otomo's groundbreaking 1988 anime that had been in development hell at Warner Brothers since 2002. 23 years into in development and multiple directors. No one thought it was actually going to happen, but when Taika signed on as director in 2017, fans believed it would finally happen. They thought Taika may be the only person who could pull this off, but right after his appointment, Taika claimed to be busy. He signed on for Jojo Rabbit, Thor Love and Thunder, Next Goal Wins, and the Star Wars projects, so Akira kept getting postponed. In 2019, the film was removed from his schedule entirely. In 2023, Taika came out to say that he was still attached to the Akira project and it was part of his backlog. But at the moment, he was focused on Clara and the Sun. At this moment, fans were starting to lose hope, and they were right to do so. Akira was officially dead, and seeing the movies Taika had put out while he claimed to be busy, many fans were relieved to see the project cancelled because it meant that Taika would not get the chance to ruin what was a masterpiece. Like a blog pointed out, interpreting that very Japan-specific story for American audiences will be tough. Hopefully, it stays in the hands of Japanese filmmakers and stars who can do it the justice it deserves. But Akira won't be the only project that would fail as a result of Taika's behavior. His Star Wars project, which was announced in 2020 after he directed the finale of The Mandalorian, became a zombie project. In December 2024, insider Daniel Rickman reported that the Star Wars film was on indefinite hold. There was no clear timeline or official updates, just silence. Although the production company in charge, Lucasfilm, never officially confirmed the cancellation, they didn't need to. Everyone understood what indefinite hold meant. It was corporate language saying that Taika had been quietly removed from the Star Wars franchise. But Taika's biggest loss came in November 2023 when his new film Next Goal Wins was released in theaters and flopped harder than anyone could have predicted. It was based on the inspirational true story of the American Samoa national soccer team, and it should have been an easy win for Taika because it was small-scale, heartfelt, and exactly the kind of underdog story he'd built his career on.
I just love the idea that this was a true story. It's a classic underdog story and a really uplifting one, kind of, in the vein of all the great sports films.
However, the film was a huge miss and a loss at the box office. It opened to just $2.5 million despite playing in over 2,240 theaters nationwide. And since it was filmed on a $10 million budget, the film needed at least $28 million to break even. Instead, it just made $6.7 million domestically, and the total worldwide gross was $17.9 million. But the financial loss was nothing compared to how the critics tore this film apart. Next Goal Wins scored 46% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it is officially Taika's worst score as a director at his first Rotten rating in over a decade. Many of those critics were brutal. iNews called it a film that completely fails to charm, while another critic said it's also supremely apt that, like the team featured in the film, Waititi fumbles the ball at every turn. There is no doubt that the Taika magic was gone. The filmmaker, who once made a film on a measly budget of $2.5 million and turned it into a $23.9 million worldwide hit, couldn't even make a $10 million underdog sports movie work. By 2025, Taika Waititi was down, and it was really bad. An Academy Award-winning filmmaker who had once been entrusted with $250 million Marvel budgets and Star Wars franchises suddenly became a commercial director. In February 2026, two Super Bowl commercials premiered back-to-back, and both were directed by Taika Waititi. The first was for Pepsi, titled The Choice. It featured a Coca-Cola polar bear taking the Pepsi challenge and choosing Pepsi Zero Sugar in a blind taste test.
You're not the only one. This can be heavy. Tell me about your mother.
Waititi himself appeared in a cameo as the bear's therapist, telling the conflicted mascot. The second was for Xfinity, reuniting the original Jurassic Park cast, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum, in a comedic spot where Wi-Fi solves all the park's problems. These were no ordinary commercials. They were high budget, filled with A-list Hollywood stars, and well executed. But it raises the question of why an Oscar-winning director is spending his time making ads instead of movies. Taika found an answer to that question, saying, "Selfishly, I've used the world of making commercials as my filmmaking gym." He went on to say that it is fun to play with the creative space, and it's not as risky for him when he's making commercials. This sounded noble, but it can also be seen differently. Taika wasn't using commercials to sharpen his skills. This is what happens when a director can no longer pitch movies to production houses and get them accepted, and he has to resort to high-paying ad work because studios no longer trust him with huge-budget movies. But the most glaring evidence of Taika's fall from grace in the industry comes from the film Clara and the Sun, the adaptation of Kazuo Ishiguro's acclaimed novel wrapped production in April 2024 and starred Jenna Ortega, one of Hollywood's hottest young stars. It was based on a New York Times bestseller by a Nobel Prize-winning author. On paper, it should have been an easy release. Instead, it disappeared. No trailers, no release date, no marketing campaign, just silence. No one has heard any update about the film. Clara and the Sun has been in post-production since April 2024. Yet the studio decided to sit on it even though one of the hottest young stars in Hollywood starred in it. One possible reason would be that they have no faith in the film, they don't believe in it, or in Taika's Taika's ability to entertain people like he used to, and they're quietly trying to figure out what to do with it. This is who Taika Waititi has become in 2026. An ad man, a celebrity pitchman, a filmmaker for hire who delivers safe, corporate-approved comedy for brands that pay well and demand nothing risky. This isn't extinction. This is something worse, a demotion. Taika has been quietly removed from the conversation about serious filmmakers, and when people talk about the next greats, his name won't come up anymore.